She thought no one was watching when she took that first sip of tea. But in a house where money meant power, every small act could turn into a war. Moments later, a scream echoed through the Coleman mansion, hot coffee splattering across her uniform, while the rich boy who caused it smirked. Everyone expected her to cry, but the maid who bowed in silence once trained champions. And by tomorrow, she'd teach the millionaire's son a lesson no amount of wealth could buy. The Coleman mansion smelled like lemon polish and quiet arrogance. Every surface gleamed, marble that reflected chandeliers, silver that caught the light like diamonds. Even the air felt heavy, as if money itself was breathing through the walls. Naomi Grant stood beside the long dining table, silver tray balanced perfectly in her hands. Her uniform was black and pressed, her lace collar crisp, her posture straight as a soldier's. She had worked in homes before, but never one like this. This was her first week at the Colemans. And already she could feel the difference. "Here, silence wasn't peace, it was power." "Sit down," came a voice smooth as glass. Naomi turned. Mrs. Coleman, elegant in pearls and silk, gestured toward a chair. Her tone was kind but practiced. "You've been standing all morning. Pour yourself some tea before the guests arrive." Naomi hesitated. "Ma'am, I couldn't. It wouldn't be right." "It's fine," Mrs. Coleman insisted, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "You've earned it," so Naomi obeyed. She lowered herself onto one of the heavy carved chairs, the kind that looked too expensive to touch. Carefully, she poured a cup of tea. The porcelain clinked softly. Steam curled like a whisper. She sat with grace, holding the cup in both hands. Her back was straight, her eyes lowered. She didn't notice the door behind her open, because that was the moment Ethan Coleman walked in, 15 years old, blonde hair slicked back. Designer sweater, sneakers that cost more than most people's rent. Behind him, 3 friends all laughing too loudly, filming too often, and when Ethan saw her, the maid, sitting at his family's table, his smile froze. The hell is she doing here? Naomi turned, setting the cup down with composure. "Good afternoon, sir." "Sir?" Ethan echoed, eyes wide with disbelief. "You think you can sit at this table and call me sir?" "You're a maid. You don't sit in my family's chair." One of his friends snorted, already pulling out his phone. "Bro, she's sipping tea like she owns the place." "This is gold." Mrs. Coleman stiffened. "Ethan, don't start." But Ethan wasn't listening. "Not with his friends watching. You said she's new, right?" he said, smirking. "Maybe she needs to learn how things work here." He started toward Naomi, footsteps echoing sharply across the marble. The laughter behind him swelled. Naomi's fingers tightened on the tray, but her face stayed calm. "Rule number 1, Ethan said, standing over her. "You don't sit where you serve." Naomi rose immediately, eyes low. "I apologize, young sir. Your mother asked me to rest for a moment." "Oh, so now you're blaming my mom," Ethan sneered. "You think we need excuses from people like you?" Her voice was quiet, steady. "No, young sir. I meant no disrespect." That calm tone, humble but unshaken, only enraged him further. His friends were still filming. He couldn't look weak now. "You people always have an answer for everything," he said, and reached for the coffee pot, the one Naomi had just filled for the guests. Naomi's breath caught. "Sir, it's hot." "Too late." Ethan tilted the pot, and steaming coffee splashed across her uniform, her hand, the tray. The sound that followed wasn't a shout, just the sharp gasp of someone holding in pain. Naomi stepped back, trembling slightly, her fingers red where the liquid had touched. The laughter stopped. Even Ethan blinked, realizing the line he'd crossed. Mrs. Coleman shot up from her seat. "Ethan, what is wrong with you?" She shouldn't have been sitting there." He stammered, his voice suddenly unsure. Naomi's chest rose and fell. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she straightened her back, slowly. Her expression wasn't anger. It was something colder, control. "It's quite all right, ma'am," she said softly. "It was my mistake." Her hand still trembled. But she bowed, collected the shards of her pride, and turned toward the kitchen. The only sound that followed her was the soft echo of her shoes on the marble floor. Mrs. Coleman glared at her son. "You're going to apologize," Ethan muttered something under his breath. His friends looked uncomfortable now, slipping their phones back into their pockets. But Naomi didn't wait to hear it. In the kitchen, she ran cool water over her hand, the sting sharp, her reflection ghostly in the steel sink. For a moment her lips trembled. Then she exhaled, and the tremble vanished, because Naomi Grant was not just a maid. Once she had been a coach, a mentor. She had trained young athletes to rise from failure, to master discipline over ego. She had built winners until a scandal, a betrayal, and one tragic accident took it all away. Now she was here, starting over. But she hadn't lost what truly mattered: strength, patience, precision. And when she looked up into that reflection again, her eyes were calm, but they held something fierce behind them. Tomorrow, she thought, wiping her hand dry, the boy who threw coffee will learn what respect really means. The sound of boiling coffee splashing across skin silenced the mansion. But the woman standing in the middle of that silence didn't scream. She just looked at the boy who hurt her, and in her eyes there was no fear. "Only promise. Let's see if you like the taste of this house," Ethan sneered. "Ethan, stop!" Mrs. Coleman gasped, but it was already too late. The boy tilted the pot. Scalding coffee poured down Naomi's hair, over her neck, soaking her apron and blouse. The dark liquid streamed like fire over her shoulders, dripping onto the marble floor in soft, hissing trails. The silver cup slipped from her trembling hands, clattering against the tray. For one suspended moment, time froze. A scream broke from one of the guests. The butler stopped mid-step, paralyzed. Even the chandelier seemed to tremble above them, glass crystals shivering in the heat of the moment. Naomi flinched, but she didn't cry out. Her fingers dug into the edge of the tray until her knuckles turned white. The silence that followed was colder than any shout. Ethan blinked, his smirk fading. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected tears, anger, humiliation, anything but silence. "Well?" he said, voice cracking. "Say something." Naomi lifted her head slowly, her hair dripping, eyes calm and steady as she met his gaze. "I will," she said softly, but not now. Her tone, measured, precise, unbroken, sent a chill through the room. Even Mrs. Coleman stopped breathing. At that exact moment, Mr. Coleman entered the dining hall, briefcase in hand, still shrugging off his coat. "What's going on here?" His eyes swept the scene, the spilled coffee, the maid standing soaked and trembling, his son frozen with the empty pot still in hand. "Ethan," he said sharply, "what did you do?" She was sitting in your chair," Ethan stammered. "She thinks she's better than us." "She was following your mother's instructions," Mr. Coleman replied, his voice steel. "Are you out of your mind?" "She's just a maid," Ethan shouted. The room fell silent again. Then Mr. Coleman's voice cracked through it like thunder. "That maid deserves more respect." "Then you just showed her," Naomi placed the tray carefully back on the table, her hands shaking from both pain and restraint. "It's all right, sir," she whispered. "Please don't argue because of me." Mrs. Coleman rushed to her side with a towel, eyes wide with guilt. "Naomi, I am so sorry." "No apology needed, ma'am," Naomi said softly, taking the towel but barely using it. "I've dealt with worse," Ethan scoffed from behind her. "Oh, please." "Now you're trying to act like some kind of victim?" Naomi's gaze lifted, sharper now. Calm but sharp. "A victim?" she repeated, stepping closer. "No, I stopped being that a long time ago." The boy frowned, confused by her composure. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing you're ready to understand." Their eyes locked. A spoiled boy with inherited arrogance and a woman who'd survived battles he couldn't imagine. The tension between them was electric, almost physical. Then Mr. Coleman's voice cut through it, low and firm. "Ethan, apologize." Ethan's jaw clenched. His friends were still there, phones half raised, not daring to laugh anymore. His face burned red. "Whatever," he muttered. "Sorry." Naomi inclined her head slightly. I accept your words, she said quietly. But one day you'll learn that respect can't be forced. It's earned. She turned to leave, but as she brushed past the table, her burned shoulder hit the edge. The pain made her wince, barely, but she refused to make a sound. Mrs. Coleman hurried after her. Please let the doctor look at you. Naomi paused at the doorway, half turned. No need. I've trained through worse pain. Trained? Mrs. Coleman repeated, confused. Naomi met her eyes briefly. Old habits, she said almost to herself, and walked down the long corridor with her spine straight, her steps steady, leaving wet footprints on the shining floor. Behind her, the silence broke into whispers. She didn't even cry, one of Ethan's friends whispered. Man, what's her deal? Said another. But the only voice that mattered came from Mr. Coleman. His tone carried the kind of authority that made the walls listen. Ethan, he said coldly, if that woman leaves this house, you leave too. Do you understand me? Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. She's just a maid, he muttered again, weaker this time. No, his father replied, each word deliberate. She's the only person here who acted with dignity. The room went dead silent again. In the kitchen, Naomi stood by the sink, rinsing the burn beneath cool water. Her face was pale but expressionless. Steam still rose faintly from the soaked fabric of her dress. The cold water bit against her skin, but she didn't flinch. Not once. Behind her, the staff whispered. About what had happened. About the guests who'd filmed. About how fast the clips had hit social media. Before being ordered to delete them, Naomi ignored it. All. Her mind was somewhere else, deeper, older. She remembered the sound of a gym, shoes, squeaking against the mat, the rhythm of breath, the voice of her old coach calling out counts. She remembered the discipline, the control, the sharp focus that turned pain into progress. And for the first time in years, that part of her stirred again, the side she thought she'd buried. She looked at her reflection in the steel surface of the sink. Soaked hair clinging to her cheek. Eyes steady, expression unreadable. Never again, she whispered. Unless I have to. But deep down, she already knew. After today, she would have to. Because some lessons couldn't be taught with words. They had to be earned the hard way. And tomorrow, she would make sure Ethan Coleman learned his. By evening, the mansion wasn't quiet anymore. It buzzed, not with laughter or music, but guilt. A single video had turned privilege into shame. And by sunrise, the boy who poured boiling coffee on a maid would face something far hotter, truth. By the time the sun dipped behind the Coleman estate, tension filled every room like smoke. Conversation stopped when footsteps passed. Doors closed softly, carefully, as if the house itself feared breaking. Ethan tried to laugh it off with his friends. She's probably gone by now, he muttered. Couldn't handle a little heat. But when he walked past the kitchen, his smirk faded, because she was still there. Naomi stood at the counter, folding napkins into perfect squares. Her sleeves rolled up neatly, a faint white bandage peeking from under one. Her movements were calm, steady, deliberate. Graceful. You're still here, Ethan muttered. Without looking up, Naomi said simply, Work isn't finished. You should have quit, he said. I don't run from things that scare me, she replied softly. Ethan frowned. I don't scare you. That was when she finally met his eyes. Calm, direct. You remind me of someone I used to train, she said. He thought power meant shouting. Until he met someone stronger. Ethan took a half step forward, trying to hide the sting in his voice. Oh yeah? You think you're stronger than me? Naomi didn't flinch. I know I am. But strength isn't about hurting people. It's about control, something you don't have yet. Before he could answer, his father's voice broke the silence. Both of you. My office, now. The study felt colder than usual. The ticking clock seemed louder. Mr. Coleman sat behind his mahogany desk, fingers folded tightly, expression carved in disappointment. Ethan, he began. I called your school. The boy's face paled. They saw the video. His father continued. Before I could stop it, Ethan's heart sank. Someone posted it? Yes, Mr. Coleman said sharply. And now the entire city has seen you pour scalding coffee on a woman who never even raised her voice. Sponsors are calling. Reporters, too. I didn't mean to, Ethan began. You meant to show power, his father interrupted. But what you showed was weakness. The words hit harder than any punishment. Then Naomi's voice rose softly from beside them. Sir, she said gently. Don't destroy his life over a mistake, Mr. Coleman frowned. Naomi, I've seen enough boys punished without learning anything, she continued. Let me handle it, Ethan blinked, confused. Handle what? Naomi's eyes stayed on him, calm and steady. Come to the gym tomorrow morning, she said. I'll teach you what respect feels like, and how it's earned. Mr. Coleman hesitated, studying her face, then nodded slowly. Do it. Maybe he'll learn something from someone stronger. The next morning. The old gym behind the estate was silent, except for the creak of the floorboards and the hum of distant wind. Ethan stepped inside, hands in his pockets, the smell of dust and rubber mats filling the air. Naomi was already there, standing in the center of the mat, wearing a simple gray tracksuit. Her hair was tied back, her face calm but unreadable. Take your shoes off, she said. He smirked. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, she replied. He sighed but obeyed, kicking off his sneakers and stepping onto the mat. So what now? You gonna lecture me? Naomi didn't answer. She just moved. It wasn't fast. It was precise. One heartbeat, she was standing still. The next, his wrist was twisted and his knees hit the mat before he even realized she'd touched him. Pain shot up his arm. His breath caught. Naomi's voice was calm. Lesson 1. Power without discipline destroys you first. Ethan groaned, trying to stand. How did you... I taught self-defense for 15 years, she said, helping him up. Black belt. 3-time regional champion. He stared, stunned. I stopped fighting, she continued quietly, after I broke my spine protecting a student. I promised never to raise my hand again until you poured boiling coffee on me. Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked at her, speechless. Naomi released his wrist gently. I didn't hurt you. I just reminded you you're not invincible. Remember this pain before you give it to someone else. He rubbed his wrist, eyes wide, not from pain, but realization. For the first time, the arrogance in him cracked. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not because my dad told me to, but because you didn't fight back when you could have, Naomi nodded once. Then maybe, she said softly, you'll be worth forgiving. That evening, the family gathered again in the grand dining room. The same room where everything had fallen apart now waited in silence for something new to begin. Mr. Coleman stood at the head of the table. Ethan stood beside Naomi, his posture straight but humbled. I have something to say, Ethan began, voice low but steady. Everyone looked at him. What I did was cruel, he said. I thought being rich meant I could act like I owned everyone. But she taught me I own nothing, not even respect. Naomi inclined her head. Apology accepted, she said gently. Just make sure it means something tomorrow. Mrs. Coleman clapped softly, eyes wet with tears. Naomi, she said, voice trembling. Please stay with us. We need people like you, Naomi smiled faintly. You don't need me, ma'am. You need what I taught your son. Mrs. Coleman blinked. And what's that? Respect, Naomi said simply. She turned toward the door, the light from the chandelier catching the bandage on her shoulder. Thank you for the lesson, Mr. Coleman said quietly behind her. Naomi paused at the doorway. It wasn't just for him. And then she walked out into the night, the cool air kissing her burned skin. Behind her, silence lingered, a silence not of guilt, but of change. Ethan watched her leave, his throat tight. She could have hurt me, he whispered. His father nodded slowly. That's what real strength looks like, son, knowing when not to. And from that day forward, Ethan Coleman never raised his voice at anyone who worked under his roof again.